video is about individuation, the fourth of the four laws or rights or ideals that govern heaven. And this is sort of the one that the other three are building up to. I would argue, or I guess just claim, that human beings are the beings that individuate. Individuation is our task, and it is our greatest joy. And the basic idea, is that every person has the ability to blossom into something that is just fully realized and unique, infinitesimally unique, and that that process of blossoming and expressing one's unique view, way of being, has a it has a contagious quality to it, that it, when others see it happening, that they kind of like catch it, and it can happen to them too. And ideally in heaven, like heaven is just this like just environment of incubation and individuation, and human beings are uncovering who they are, and presenting that iteratively as they're sort of on their paths to one another, which they find, if you're doing that, you find great satisfaction in being seen for who you are, being esteemed for having achieved what you've achieved, and then that energy sort of spills over into others, and you can awaken the courage to do something similar in someone else. And what that presupposes is that that this is difficult to do, that like there's another alternative, which is to be to have yourself kind of frozen, right? To sort of be humiliated or starved into a mindset and an attitude in life where the beliefs that you have in your mind, your scripts that are running, are telling you to basically shut up, and telling you that you can't, that your dream isn't realistic, and that same sort of closed script is then actually going outward too, and you sort of hate others who are manifesting who they are. And this has been called the emotional plague, and it's this is something that is rampant in our world right now in a big way. And and the importance of this is, it cannot be underscored too few times, that like there is so much satisfaction to be gained from individuation, and there are so many layers of potential self-delusion, and judgment of others, and criticism, and like censorship, or false beliefs that X, Y, and Z isn't possible because you don't know how it's gonna happen yet or whatever. And morality, like that there are so many false moralities uh, where one can sort of devote oneself and I mean, Christianity, as a Christian, I'll say that Christianity has been one of the worst um, implementers or spreaders of this kind of self denying and hateful um, attitude of sort of false self sacrifice that sort of stops you from actually being the loving being that can emanate Christian love that will sort of wake others up. And so yeah, I mean that's the basic idea that like there should be a human right to individuation. That um, it's not like the icing on the cake of life or something like that. Like I think it's even more important. I think it's even more important than relationships. Like any you know relationships are really important, but some relationships are meant to last for a long time or forever, perhaps. But a lot of times, the relationships, can be most valuable when they go badly or when they end. Like our our personal relationships are uh, they are more finite than our infinite tasks in the name of things like art and science. Um, and uh, and like there's an opposite perspective there too, because it's possible, it's possible to have a sick kind of version of manic hyper focus on whatever tasks like art and science that is a defense mechanism against relationships. So there's that nuance there, but um, anyway, uh, individuation, and this is what Blake calls Eden. It's the highest of the four alimonies, Olalan. Um, and um, and I like just a lot more can be. Well, okay. So one thing I'll say about individuation is that with individuation, time flows backwards somehow, and as a creative person myself, um, I very much have a very concrete experience of like there being a kind of beacon, a sort of like ideal infinite beacon um, that is drawing me towards it. Uh, and with my music and art and even ideas, practice generally, like I don't really know what I'm doing, but I know that I can sort of take certain measures to try and kind of serve this like demigod or whatever it is, muse, daemon. I guess muse is not the right word, but and uh, you can observe liturgy albums over time that with each new album it becomes clear that the albums in the series so far were headed in a certain direction, that particular album is like a step on the way to, and that's not something that I choose or that I understand. I don't necessarily understand where the series is headed, and So I mean that's just in the course of my life, but even in say like just a session of working on a song or writing, like um, any creative person experiences this, where you just kind of give yourself to the process, and then um, some kind of punctuation mark arrives that makes sense of activity that was leading up to it that didn't know what it was leading up to. And so, one meaning of the idea of faith is this kind of humanist faith, um, which is not the only type of faith that matters. I know I follow Kierkegaard as opposed to people. Anyway, I follow Kierkegaard in distinguishing between religious faith and creative faith. Creative, and there's some distinction between, say, scientific, mathematical, artistic, entrepreneurial forms of faith are all in one category. They're not the same, but they are in the same genus. And religious faith has a similar shape to it, but it's a different thing. And what is all of this leading up to? First of all, is this true for everybody? Like, I don't know. You could argue, like, maybe everybody has this same drive to individuate, and those who don't really manifest it are people who, in whom it's been closed off. Like maybe, I imagine it being like there's people who, they had a child, the type of childhood that sort of like sealed off this drive, but in a pretty like agreeable and manageable way, and so they sort of end up living lives more like as worker bees, kind of, and they don't really mind. But like, if they had, like, there's, and this is the difference between psychoanalysis and like ordinary psychotherapy, where like in regular clinical psychology, there's like a secure attachment, where like you're parented well, and you have a lot less conflict in life, and you can kind of grow, and explore, but like, and you don't really rebel much, but it's like those limits, there's a way to live, there's a way to be raised, I think, where if you actually have healthy boundaries, that actually limits your range of experience. And so, if you have more madness in your experience growing up, that gives you a certain potential that's a bit more magical. So, in heaven, like that. Anyway, it could be, however, that maybe it's just a personality type that likes to individuate, and there are other personality types that really just don't want to, or wouldn't find that much satisfaction in it. I don't really know, but I lean towards imagining that it's there in everybody, and that would mean that like it's actually, it's not optimal to have just happiness in heaven, like that you really actually want a certain amount of suffering, to sort of open up the range of what is possible to experience and possible to do, and have the experience of healing. And I think that there's somehow the crucifixion of Christ is like a something about that story is saying what I'm saying here, I think. And then just one last question with individuation is like, why is it that humans have this drive that they can sort of mature into if they heal from their wounds, or they sort of transcend their more basic desires. And uh, and what is its relationship to capitalism? Like, is especially as we get more and more into a world of online creators and influencers as being kind of like the basic unit of culture. It's like, is that all just playing a part in a process that is sort of like amplifying, um, that's kind of using us in ways that we would prefer to stop, if we only really understood it or only were able to. Um, and that's certainly a view that is not it's not the easiest view to argue against. Um, uh, I I tend to see it though as that we really have a like immortal divine core in the mind of God, and that God isn't the same thing as capitalism. Um, but capitalism also isn't like, it's not just a disease, it's not just a disaster, that like it is refining something in the human spirit, um, and heaven will be born at a moment where technology has gotten complex enough that that time, that right moment comes to sort of kick down the ladder, and not have markets anymore, and no longer have a need to expand industrial production, or like all like capitalism is a means, um, and attempts to like abort its uh, uh, process have clearly not worked, and maybe they were premature, but there's still a moment, um, surely coming up in the next decade, where uh, um, it will have sort of exhausted its usefulness. And so, human creativity plays a part. Um, it, it plays a part in undermining uh, repressive social conventions, because that's the thing. Um, the humanist wants things like critique and scientific discovery and creative realization to be sort of walled off from the sort of industrial machine of capital, um, and like a nihilist wants to just say, no, the only reason those things are even allowed to happen is like so that they can um, liquidate cultural obstacles to the expansion of capital. Um, and I don't see why it makes sense to come down on one side or the other. Uh, I think that we'll understand more about what individuation is once we're on the other side of the wall. Um, but that like will be on the other side of the wall, and capitalism will be left behind on the capitalism won't make it across the wall, but it'll be with us right until that moment that we sort of leap out of it. Um, Individuation.